Hello everyone, you are watching ITV Gold and I'm your host Aditi Lama. Today, in person, finally, we're being joined by ITV Gold's senior political commentator, Mr. Rohit Vyas. So welcome to ITV Gold.
Thank you.
So awesome to have you here in person.
Yeah, nice to be here in person actually. And much better quality to look at as well, right?
Exactly.
Instead of on, on computers and all the rest of it. So very
Yes.
nice to be with
So
you all.
slowly and slowly, we're trying to go back to normal and invite people to our new studio in Edison, New Jersey. So it's so great to have you here.
Likewise.
Let's go right into it. I have a lot of questions for you, starting right now. The first question to you has to be about these elections that are coming up November 2nd. We're in the state of New Jersey, and New Jersey has the gubernatorial race going on. It also has other local and state level offices that are also open for their local races. Let's talk about the governor's race. Governor Phil Murphy versus Republican nominee Jack Ciattarelli. How have you looked at their campaign run so far? And following that, there has been a lot of negative campaigning from both ends. Was that necessary?
Not necessary, but it's the nature of the beast. That's politics for you. And any election that can be contentious, especially as this one is, and critical. By the way, there's not just New Jersey, but Virginia, which also has a gubernatorial race going on right now, and that's turning pretty nasty as well. So that's all part of politics. But what's outstanding is the amount of money that's been spent. I think it's about $40 million already total, 46 million, something to that effect, that both candidates together have spent on this campaign, which speaks to its importance. You can't take anything for granted. Phil Murphy is a Democrat, Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican. In the past 40 years, no Democratic incumbent has been elected to a second consecutive term in the state of New Jersey. That's why this race is being watched very closely. And in New Jersey, the electorate is particularly fickle in the way they vote. So you might think the race is going Murphy's way, or you might think it's going Jack Ciattarelli's way. At this point, it looks like it's going Murphy's way, but then that could be deceptive.
Right.
And therefore, it's extremely important that people go out there and cast their ballots, because one vote can make the difference, especially in a state as diverse and as big and packed with people as New Jersey.
You know, it's very interesting in New Jersey. For the first time, they're having in-person election on November 2nd. Again, if you are in New Jersey, please go and vote. So what's happening is, it's very interesting. They are having this election, and Jack Ciattarelli wants everyone to go vote in person on November 2nd. Governor Murphy, on the other hand, is promoting early voting, and he wants everyone to go to the polls as soon as possible. Why do you think they're both differing in that, and what does that do for the actual voting on the day of?
I think Jack Ciattarelli is, towing basically the Donald Trump line, which is I want to see how many people actually go in person and actually cast that ballot, so there won't be any room for any kind of maneuvering, or altering of the election ballot process. That's all it is. This whole business of fake election and fake results and all that Donald Trump perpetuated and spread out there with no proof whatsoever. So it's that type of thing that he's trying to portray. On the other hand, Phil Murphy wants people to vote early, in my opinion, so that people don't have time to change their minds. One of the reasons you want somebody to go out there, cast your ballot, or vote by mail, because we can do that in New Jersey, is you don't want somebody to change their mind. As you get closer to an election, the day of elections, there is the potential for someone to say, wait a minute, all of a sudden I don't like what this person's saying and I think I should go the other way. So there is that potential. And I think Phil Murphy is very cognizant of that fact, that the electorate in New Jersey in particular, I can testify to that, is very fickle, and they can be swayed at the last minute. And I think that's why his pitch is, go out there, vote as early as you can. We have early voting, in-person voting, also now in New Jersey for the first time. Began this past Saturday, and he wants as many people as possible to cast their ballots early. Whereas Jack Ciattarelli says, no, wait till everything plays out, till you hear the final word from both of us, then you go cast your ballots. Plus, we'll know in his mind that it's a genuine ballot.
Governor Murphy, at a point, had double-digit points ahead of Jack Ciattarelli. Now that difference has gone to single points.
Correct.
I think he's about 6 to 7 points ahead of him. How big is that still, and should Governor Murphy be worried, according to you?
Yeah, he should be worried. It's a close race, and I know he is worried. He has mentioned himself, the fact that I gave you that the 40 years, in the past 40 years, any Democrat who's been an incumbent as governor could not take for granted they'd be elected to a second term, and indeed they haven't. So he's very cognizant of that and has been talking about it. I'm not surprised by the narrowing of polls. Always happens in New Jersey during the elections, happens in many critical elections. We're going to see it play out in Virginia as well. Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, the Democrat, had a huge lead initially. Right now, it's very tight over there as well. That's why you got the heavyweights coming out, Joe Biden and Obama and all the rest of it for both these candidates. So it is a matter of concern. We're not going to know the real results till there is actually the election and the votes counted in New Jersey. The pollsters are not going to mean anything, in my opinion, in this state, and you'll see. It'll be down to the wire. And maybe I'll be proven entirely wrong, but I don't think so. The New Jersey electorate has a particular predisposition toward the gubernatorial office as opposed to the grassroots level. At the grassroots, you can expect a certain number of Democrats, a certain number of Republicans within the particular counties that are conservative or liberal, whichever the case may be, to go in that direction. But for the governor's office, not the case.
One more question on this. Jack Ciattarelli on record to us said that he believes in reproductive rights of women, but with restrictions. Governor Murphy on record has said that he would do everything in his power to get Reproductive Freedom Act passed in the state of New Jersey. When you're looking at women and what's happening with women's rights across the country, in whose hand is Jersey safer, according to you?
Oh, okay. I think Jersey would be safer in Murphy's hands, for sure. Women's rights are extremely important, including the right to have an abortion if they choose. It's their body. I don't think anybody has the right to tell them when or when not they should do whatever with their, with their own biological systems. And so I think overall, I think yes, Phil Murphy would be a safer bet. He's also proven himself to be a pretty good governor, in my opinion, in these past 4 years. He's done a great job. Of course, he's had some help from the federal government in terms of the CARES Act and a lot of those funds coming into New Jersey. And New Jersey has had a huge budget deficit for years. All of a sudden, it's in a surplus, or at least a reduced deficit, thanks to federal funds coming in. At the same time, Phil Murphy has given some good priorities to infrastructure, to transportation, which is part of infrastructure. He's done a lot of good work with New Jersey Transit, for instance. And so I think the state is in better hands with him. Now, this is not an endorsement by any means, because I'm an independent.
Right.
As a journalist and as a voter too, I'm independent. I'm not affiliated with either party. But in the end, my ultimate analysis is I think New Jersey is in better hands with Phil Murphy.
And I respect your honesty. Again, that is your personal view, and you are an independent. You're not favoring either of the sides. You just mentioned infrastructure. I'd like to go into that right now. My question to you is, we have been talking about infrastructure for the last couple of weeks, actually for the last couple of months. Why can't the Congress get this passed? Because it's so important to work on the infrastructure of this country. It's falling apart as we speak.
Yeah, it's all to do with money, obviously. It's all to do with where you're going to put yourself in a hole with $3 trillion or $2 trillion, as it seems to be coming down to. It's probably going to come down to less. There is always a back and forth negotiation in something like this when you have this type of enormous money you're speaking of. Everybody knows infrastructure is critical for the movement of goods, for the movement of people, for the well-being of a nation, for things to get around easier, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so everybody knows that. But now funding is the key. Where are you going to get the money from? Are we going to tax people more? Are we going to tax only the rich? Are we going to tax corporations? That's where it's all getting bogged down. Plus, there are the side bills that get into a huge negotiation like this over a principal bill, which is infrastructure spending. There are the side bills of social safety net, which means there's talk about funding extra Medicare, to expand Medicare for young families, for their children, for seniors, to give them in-home assistance, which is entirely covered by the federal government. Things like that going on, expanding the state-level Medicaid, in the case of California, Medi-Cal, and the different states that have the additional care in addition to Medicare for the seniors. Those questions coming in, but the question is money. And right now, it's stuck in the fact that they want to impose a billionaire's tax, which will be a 15% levy on the richest people in the country, which they estimate to be about 100 to 130 people or 200 people, something of that to that effect. And it shouldn't be a big problem. But you will have the lobbyists, you will have the conservatives who tend to see taxing of the rich as something that's to be frowned upon, because they say that there is the trickle-down effect, all the way going back to Ronald Reagan's time. When the rich spend money, it trickles down to benefit everyone. That's their thinking, the conservative model of thinking in terms of finance and politics. The Democrats, on the other hand, believe no, we need to have a more equitable distribution of wealth. Some will call it socialism or socialist way of thinking. It depends on who you are. Certainly within the Democrats, there is division within the Democrats itself. Yeah. The progressive elements led by Pramila Jayapal, and of course everyone who's with Bernie Sanders and his thinking. So there's a lot of that going on. In the end, I expect to see a result. It's not going to be $3 trillion of infrastructure spending, maybe around 1.2 or something of that sort, with a lot of compromises on taxes and who's going to be taxed, who's to be sharing that wealth, and how it's all going to be paid back.
Very interesting. Congressman Rajakrishnamurthy on record told us that they're not trying to tax the middle class, and that is the biggest problem, because they want everybody to be taxed, and they're saying the middle class just cannot afford it.
Correct.
Do you think this bill will get passed by the end of this year?
I think so. I think it'll be passed by the end of the year. Not this week, I think. Joe Manchin has already indicated that today, definitely not. They wanted to get this done by today, because the president flies out this week to Europe.
Yeah.
He goes for a G20 summit, and then he goes for the climate summit over in Scotland. And so they wanted to wrap this up quickly. I don't know. By the time we're done with this interview, maybe they would come through with some last-minute breakthrough, but I'm not sure. By the end of the year, yes, definitely, they should be able to wrap it up. Don't forget, there are differences within Congress, the House of Representatives, within the Democratic Party, and there are differences up in the Senate as well. Yeah. So it's going to take two legislative bodies, the two highest in the country, that will have to decide this together.
I believe one of the biggest difference between Democratic Party and the Republican Party right now, at least, is Democratic Party is quite divided still. Yeah. And I feel like the Republican Party are just trying to have one say and one word so that they can actually win.
And they have the help of Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, a moderate Democrat who actually a conservative Democrat, so they feel that he's more on their side. Yeah. And the Democrats are trying to say, look, you're actually a Democrat, so do what we think we need to do for the country.
All right, let's now talk about the January 6th investigation. There has been so much going on, many testimonials, many Senate hearings. Right now, there are documents that President Trump is trying to hide from the government, which they're trying to get access to. Do you think the entire purpose of this investigation is to somehow blame President Trump? And should he be blamed for this, is my question.
No, they need to get all the facts out first. I mean, to directly blame him would be unfair, in my opinion. Again, unbiased opinion. You can't just go out and blame him. Of course, you have instances on video and stuff where you could sort of translate that or infer from it that he instigated the mob to go out there, etc. Unless you have actual proof, such as an email trace or a phone call, cellular phone calls from the presidential phone, telling people, hey, this is what I think needs to be done. Or if you have recordings of some of his aides, indeed there is one recording of one particular advisor who was trying to convince Mike Pence, the then vice president, to annul the election results and to bring it in favor of Donald Trump. That recording has just been revealed, and it came out today at some point. I was watching it. Now that can be damning evidence, but you need stuff like that to be able to, prove that the president of the United States was actually the one who instigated the riots. Now on the surface, it might look like it, but that doesn't mean anything, in my opinion. There has to be solid ground, because those are serious charges to bring, especially against the leader of the country.
He did say that he loves them in a video on Twitter.
Well, saying you love them doesn't mean anything else. It doesn't mean he's instigating. Instigating would be to say, go out there and riot. Go out there and, attack. That would be instigating, and that would be direct evidence. So I'm trying to give an objective presentation on this. If I were a lawyer, that's what I'd look for. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm a journalist. And that's what I look for as a journalist. Okay, you can say this, but can I have some proof of what you're saying? And that's what I, as an investigative reporter, would do, is look for proof. And I think that's what a lot of reporters are doing, a lot of lawyers are doing. Many lawyers, unfortunately, are not. Many journalists, unfortunately, are not. They're trying to use theory, they're trying to use rhetoric, and they're trying to use just what they feel may be the right thing. But we got to look at substance.
And just on January 6th, it brings me to Facebook. There is this new series called Facebook Papers that has been released, and it basically says that Facebook, quote, facilitates hate speech, misinformation, political discord, extremism, and even human trafficking. They have also linked it to the fact that most of the decisions for that riot rally that happened on January 6th was discussed on Facebook. Facebook was used to gather people together to that rally. How are you looking at Facebook right now with all of the criticism coming towards it? How responsible is social media for all of these issues?
Here's my opinion. I don't think social media was created with the idea that its creators are supposed to be responsible. Social media, by its very nature, means you're allowing people to have a conversation between themselves. How do you go about policing billions of people around the world? Facebook has an estimated 3 billion participants. How on earth do you go about policing them? First of all, do you police them? Is it a violation of your rights? Most of these discussions that are taking place on Facebook, most of the things that happen where people make comments, etc., you realize are on comment portions of Facebook. It's not like there's a group that's saying, okay, let's do this. I mean, there are groups that'll create a WhatsApp page and a Facebook page for that matter, etc. Yes. But usually things get out of hand in the conversations and the comments that take place. So you, for instance, you post a picture of someone, right? Aditi posts a picture of herself and a few friends. Now you get a comment from your friends, then you get comments from friends of friends, etc., etc. And that's how a dialogue begins, or a debate begins, or an argument begins. How on earth are you going to police that? Who's to say that Facebook should be judging what someone says, etc.? Now this is my thinking of how can you regulate it? Otherwise, you close down a social media website altogether. But then its purpose was only to facilitate conversation. That's how they make their revenue as well. By the number of eyeballs that hit the number of people that click, they make their advertising revenue online in the same way. Not just Facebook, but any social media site. How are you going to regulate this? Other than, say, pornography, violence, etc., where you must make the effort to go out. But conversations that people have, and everyone has a freedom to express what they want, if they do, how do you do it? So if Facebook has the wherewithal to control it, and they do have the mechanisms and the algorithms where they can control something automatically, yes, then they should implement it. But then again, that makes them the judge of conversations. Do they have the authority to be the judge of a conversation? If you and I have a political argument now, right, sitting here, and Facebook is the one that's recording this whole thing, just put it in that scenario.
Okay.
Now, who gives Facebook the right to say, no, Mr. Vyas, you are wrong, we're going to censor you, or Ms. Lamba, you're wrong, we're going to censor you. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Who's going to control that?
But there has to be a sense of accountability at some point. Because here's the thing, some of this has actually instigated hate. The riots, and it's been called domestic terrorism.
People have instigated hate. That's the thing.
But how are they talking? How are they communicating? Where is this going?
Through a platform. Exactly, through a platform. That's my point. But these platforms were created precisely for discussion. I don't think anybody foresaw. I don't think Mark Zuckerberg or any of his executives or anybody, they're all young people. They were young people, now they're older. But they were young kids, and they came up with this idea. And who thought it would go in this direction? It's like the internet itself. It was a creation initially of the Defense Department, and it's become worldwide, right? Now, who knows how far internet can go? You have, in the case of internet, you have governments that can censor it, you know, but that again means censorship. So really, we're talking about freedom of information, freedom of flow of information, and whether that should be regulated or not, and who regulates it. Should it be private industry? Should it be the government? And who's to judge what should be regulated? That's my point. It's a very difficult question for anybody to answer.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult. Only time will tell what happens with that. My final question to you has to be about Afghanistan. Tell us, how are you feeling about the Taliban's control? tell us, how are you feeling about the women of Afghanistan? And tell us the conversations that are happening around that country.
For the women, I feel awful. I just saw a story on the BBC this morning, documented, of women judges, women in law enforcement in Afghanistan being led to escape from the country. They were being helped by international aid agencies. They were being helped by several people, volunteer organizations, to get out of the country, to go to a third country, then go to Greece. They wouldn't say who the third country was, but I think it may have been Pakistan or Uzbekistan or Tajikistan. Incidentally, there's a security meeting hosted by Iran with neighboring countries around Afghanistan, including Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, and I believe Russia and China are taking part in that same meeting virtually. So it's a foreign ministers level meeting that's going on to decide how to secure Afghanistan. As for the Taliban, they have no control right now. The world has imposed severe sanctions on them. Unfortunately, the side effect is it's affecting the people of Afghanistan. That means starvation.
Yeah.
A lot of kids starving right now, and therefore the US and its allies like Britain and other countries have been trying to figure out how to actually take cash, physically take cash, fly it into Afghanistan and hand it to people so they have something to spend and keep going until they can come up with a larger picture of how to deal with this situation. Very scary. And an intelligence official just yesterday testified, top US intelligence official testified that Al-Qaeda could be capable within 6 months and at most 2 years of striking the US from within Afghanistan. In other words, getting safe haven because of the Taliban and striking us and our allies again. Very concerning, very frightening, very scary. And I think the world needs to look at Afghanistan extremely carefully again.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I've said before to you and to others is that pulling out in the manner we did was a big mistake. We should have had a much more phased withdrawal. We had to withdraw eventually, but we needed to secure the country a lot more than all of us have as allies.
How do you think President Biden should now handle it? He's been criticized for pulling out the troops
He's
too
been talking about using other sources such as drones, etc. Should Al-Qaeda or ISIS-K or whatever the terrorist groups now prevalent in that region are, is to use some of the drone technology and exterior technology and special forces if we have to. Those are guys who can sort of go in, like Navy SEALs, etc., go in, make a precision strike and get out. So if you have a terrorist hub that's operating, you either do it using drones, which is the safest way to minimal loss of manpower, or you use special forces who are trained specifically for this type of action, as was the case with Osama bin Laden under the Biden administration. When they got Osama bin Laden, they used special forces, which were the Navy SEALs, right? So these things can be used. The U.S. has extremely good, well-trained special forces at hand to carry out such a mission. So that, I agree, will be correct. I'm talking about the particular withdrawal which happened the way it did, where we did not ensure the safety of everyone who needed to get out before we had to leave ourselves. And there are still so many people trying to escape. Thankfully, there are international forces out there. There are still some Americans who are within and able to help through these international agencies, and that's what's happening right now. But it's a very scary situation, no question about it.
What do you say to people in Afghanistan? That's my last question.
Well,
especially if you're an American, I wonder how they're looking at us.
I tell you, there are many Americans who have served in Afghanistan. I've known many of them personally and who are very concerned. They're in touch with people such as interpreters and others who've been helping them, who helped the forces, the Allied forces, and especially the United States when they were in there, who helped them negotiate their way, maneuver their way through the country and through the various hazards by being translators, etc. And I know that they're most concerned about them. I think every American is actually very concerned about the Afghan people. They're a wonderful people. This battle was not against the Afghans at all. It was against Al-Qaeda specifically, against the Taliban, to get them out and to have the rule of law, democracy, which unfortunately the democratic leaders who were there left. They abandoned their country themselves. But the U.S. is very, very concerned and will always be concerned. The allies are very concerned. They will always be concerned. I don't think anyone feels very good about it.
Yeah.
Everyone has a lot of sympathy and will do their best. New Jersey,
Yeah,
we
Governor
have
Murphy
taken
has
we've
opened.
taken a lot of Afghan
Yes.
refugees in. New York has done the same. California has done the same. Many states have done it. And I think the United States will continue to have its arms open for those Afghans who need that help. They'll be here.
They need to be reestablished now.
Yep.
That's so much work.
Yep.
Well, we will be following this news up with you in
Yep.
our next episode. Thank
Yep.
you so much for giving us your time here in person
Yep.
in the studio.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And we are done recording.